From the Foundation Studio right here on Biloxi's Back Bay, welcome to SuperTalk Outdoors, where we celebrate every single Monday the world-class outdoors of the state of Mississippi as we listen to my buddy Steve Azar's amazing song, One Mississippi, which is now, as you know by now, the state song for the state of Mississippi. I want to thank you for joining us on this powerful SuperTalk Mississippi radio network, or on SuperTalk TV at C Spire TV. But if you're listening on Facebook or YouTube or your favorite podcast, it's August the 8th, 2022. We try to do some fishing this weekend. We were trying so hard to get our friend Travis Dunn down, our farmer friend from the Delta, down to do some offshore fishing. We've been trying to get offshore now for a couple of weekends. Travis, incidentally, is harvesting corn today, so this would have been a great weekend to take him. But thunderstorms sort of defined this past weekend. It was, early morning thunderstorms were pretty intense. In fact, that was still the story this morning, for a matter of fact. I posted about the call that I made not to go offshore, and several friends of mine commented that they regretted going. I don't blame them, because there was a lot of lightning. The bottom line is that the rain and the wind are bad enough in thunderstorms offshore this time of year, but man, I'm telling you, the thunderstorms and the lightning can be deadly. After a lot of close calls early in my life, I learned really well to live to fish another day. So I don't go out in weather like that. Always think safety first. Hey, listen, you know that the Foundation for Mississippi Wildlife Fisheries and Parks, we call it the Foundation here on the show, is a major sponsor of SuperTalk Outdoors. We really appreciate those volunteer leaders that are doing incredible things for Mississippi's outdoor recreation enjoyment. The foundation is also, though, a host of the incredibly successful Mississippi Ag and Outdoors Expo that was held this past weekend, and all reports are it was packed and incredibly successful. It was held at the new Trademark Building. As you know, but that's 110,000 square feet. 63,000 square feet is column-free, unobstructed exhibit space, and it was literally packed. I had the opportunity to have Andy Gibson, the commissioner of the Mississippi Department of Agriculture and Commerce on, and also Don Brazel, who's the CEO of the foundation. And they talked about this really innovative approach where they're mixing outdoor enjoyment with farming, bringing those two together. It's really kind of a natural fit, but it's in a lot of ways, it was a one of its kind show. And I want to congratulate the sponsors for putting on an incredible event. It only makes sense because Mississippi is the capital of the outdoors in America, and we had an opportunity to celebrate it this past weekend. Hey, now let's shift gears. The first half of the show today, we're going to visit with a Mississippian who loves the outdoors and whose idea recently led to the creation of a new dimension to our deer season. And then in the second half of the show, we're going to visit with William McKinley to continue the conversation. He's the head of the white-tailed deer program for the Mississippi Department of Wildlife, Fisheries, and Parks. And we're going to talk about the 3-day velvet season coming up in September. So now let's move over to my new friend, Taylor Sledge, and welcome him to SuperTalk Outdoors. How you doing, Taylor?
I'm great, Ricky. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. It's good to see you, my friend. Okay, so you are the president of Sledge Company, and yes, I saw where you were recently honored as one of the top entrepreneurs in Mississippi. I want to congratulate you on that. We're going to talk a little bit more about that shortly. But a quick glance at your story revealed that you're a father who loves the outdoors, and you love experiencing the outdoors with your family. I share that passion with you, incidentally. And more recently, your idea to add a velvet season to Mississippi's deer season has already become law. So congrats on that too. We'll talk more about that in just a second. But tell me about your business, Taylor.
Yeah, thanks, Ricky. I appreciate it, man. So I've been in business for 15 years. Started my business right out of college. And basically what we do is we serve as an advisor to entrepreneurs and business owners. And our approach is unique. A lot of times people that own businesses, their number one investment, the main driver of their life is the business that they own. And so what we do is we built a business that is an advisory that really supports that idea. We help them with their financial needs. We help them with their business needs. And we kind of sit on their tool belt, if you will, going through as a relationship to help them quarterback and solve problems through the years. And I love working with business people. A lot of them think way out of the box. They're wild and crazy, and you never know what you're going to deal with or what's going to come across your plate. Now, the variety of it is wonderful, and it's really very fulfilling to be in a position to solve problems for business owners, especially in Mississippi. I love working with business people in Mississippi.
Well, listen, on my show on the coast called Coast View, I spend a lot of time talking to entrepreneurs because, at the core of our success, as a set of communities that make up Mississippi, at the core of our success is entrepreneurs and small business leaders who have great ideas and are taking enormous risks and pursuing their ideas. And in fact, during the pandemic, you saw a lot more people pursuing ideas. The risk tolerance during COVID. They said, you know what, I'm going to take the risk. And you've seen that in your business as well, haven't you?
Absolutely. No question. It changed the mindset of a lot of people. It allowed them to draw their focus down in areas where they were otherwise kind of diffuse. And it did change business people in a lot of ways. And that's who we want to work with. Like you just said, the people who want to take a risk on themselves, on the belief they have, on their skill set, that's the people we want to work with. And it is fun to do it, but you're so right. COVID changed a lot of things. COVID spurred, this whole concept that we're talking about today even with the velvet season. It was a unique opportunity in a lot of ways for people to change the way they think.
Well, I've talked to so many people from the Department of Wildlife, Fisheries, and Parks, and then, of course, others who have a passion for the outdoors like you and I have. And what we see is the numbers of people who went in the outdoors during COVID went up dramatically. And if you talk to, just look at the numbers, it's incredible. It's incredible how many people went to the outdoors. They felt safe outdoors. But also, COVID caused us to get in a mode, I think, where we're all, considering our lives, or, considering our families, considering what we do in our lives. And, going out in the outdoors was an opportunity to sort of cleanse our souls, but also to think and contemplate. And, in a lot of ways, the outdoors saves us, doesn't it?
It really does. It really does. You can draw a lot of parallels of the connection with a person to nature, the outdoors, and especially hunting, to all these other things in life. And that was, that happened a lot more, I think, after this event of 2020, because it gave people this weird window of time that they've never before had and may never have again to identify that. And I don't know if a lot of folks will articulate it just that way, but I think that's kind of really what's happening.
I definitely think so. Hey, listen, you grew up in the Jackson area. Who taught you a passion for the outdoors?
Yeah, that'd be 100% my dad. When I was a kid, I was blessed to be raised by wonderful people. And when I was a kid, my mom was a flight attendant, mostly part-time, which was really cool because we flew everywhere in the world for free. But, about one weekend a month when we were really little, she would be working. And so my dad was, he was 3 steps ahead on making sure that me and my brother and him were going to be at the deer camp together, either putting up stands or, we were out hunting or whatever. And it really became the center, like, recreational focus of our lives. And it bonded us indefinitely. I mean, it was just an awesome experience. I could go on and on and on about it, but my dad's intention and my mom's support of it, really, and seeing the value in it together, I think, was really the deal. The old adage of if you hunt with your kids, you don't have to hunt for your kids. It's still happening today, man.
Listen, I say it all the time that a family that hunts and fishes together stays together. And, as you're talking about what your dad did for you, my dad and my grandfathers did it for me. And, people who I talk to on this show, it's over and over and over again, the same sort of story, this generational love, this passing down of the heritage of the outdoors. And, we're lucky to have it because it teaches you at a really early age, incredible responsibility. I mean, listen, it teaches you at an early age, whether you're on a boat offshore or whether you're hunting, by yourself. It teaches you that there are no margin for errors, that you can't you can't make a mistake. You have to be responsible and accountable, and you have to respect and be ethical about the outdoors. Those are incredible lessons to learn that really carry over into your life, isn't it?
Oh, they absolutely are. And like what you were saying earlier about the storms when you're fishing, you're not going to win against a storm. The storm will win. And it really does make you respect nature. Our house where we live is right near the woods, and every day is a battle of the woods trying to eat my house. That's the way that it works. Nature is gonna win.
Well, we're coming to a close of this section, but we'll come back on the other end. But I was on the Delta this past weekend, not this weekend, but the weekend before this past weekend, and I made a comment on last week's Super Talk Outdoors that I am amazed at how fast nature takes control. I mean, Lord have mercy, man. So much work to do to get ready for the deer season, but that's part of the process. That's definitely part of the process. Hey, when we come back, we'll continue our conversation with Taylor Sledge, and we'll talk more about the upcoming.
Leading the conversation on Mississippi's outdoors. It's Super Talk Outdoors with Ricky Matthews on Super Talk Mississippi.
Welcome back to Super Talk Outdoors. I have my friend Taylor Sledge, who is the president of Sledge Company, but more importantly, he's someone who has an incredible passion for the outdoors. Hey, Taylor, tell me about your family.
So I am married. My wife is Dr. Catherine Sledge. She's a dentist and works in Ridgeland. And then we have 3 boys. The oldest one is 10 and the youngest one is 3. And we stay very busy. I like to say my children took away my boredom. I don't have any boredom in my life. So that's what we have going on.
Hey, listen, I often say that God has a way of working in sort of miracle ways. And one of those is that after you have kids, you can't remember the days when you didn't have kids. You just can't remember those days. They're faint memories somewhere off on the distance. I had 3 kids too, but 3 to 10, what a beautiful age. I mean, the 3-year-old, again, just coming of life and wanting to see the world, and the 10-year-old's really getting up there now. He can really start to do some stuff in the outdoors. But what a great range, man. You're going to be busy for a bunch of years coming up, aren't you?
There's no question. Yes, sir. And I keep feeling like I've been busy for a while, but I keep being told, no, you just got started, man.
So you've hunted all over Mississippi, and you enjoy hunting out west. How do you, when you tell people about what you like to do, how do you explain it to them?
When I tell people about hunting, how do I explain it to them? So I always just say I love to hunt and fish, and when they ask me to sort of bring that into more focus, I just talk about, really like the value of being outdoors and ultimately connecting it to stewardship. It's interesting that it's complicated for people that don't hunt and fish to understand it. But, I believe we have God-given dominion in this world, and that it's about being a good steward of the resource. And it is just an excellent reason to teach that same idea of stewardship to my kids. And it's a great way to grow as a person, just to go out and participate in that. And there's so many takeaways. So that's really kind of the driving force of it. But for me, going and hunting out west, other places, other parts of the state, having the experiences, it's so cool because they're all right there. That nature is ready for us anytime. We just have to go to it ourselves, take the initiative. And so, I want to see and do it all. And I really think that one of the most interesting things you can do with your life is find some kind of direction in the outdoors. And
the people you come in contact with, man, that's the thing that I always talk about. And people who think it's just about the shooting, they don't get that it's the entire culture around around hunting and the kind of people that you come in contact with. They're all inspiring, lots of successful people. So it's really cool. Hey, listen, let's shift gears. You had this idea for a velvet season because you like us. I can literally tell you a similar story. You watch this incredible deer. And in our case, we have a lot of land that's near farmland, and lots of deer will come from all different places to come eat corn or soybeans or whatever. But as soon as they harvest, they might be gone. We'll see. As I'll talk with William McKinley here in just a few minutes. He's done, they've done a lot of research, and we know that there are deer that are resident deer that are going to be within a mile or so, and some that may go way away, but you may never see them again. That was your experience, wasn't it?
It was. And, really in 2020, bow hunting rehooked me hard. And I grew up bow hunting, but it was one of those things where it was like there's so much gear and it's hot, and really I'd probably gotten lazy. And my wife, the beautiful, kind, intelligent woman that she is, she bought me a new bow for our anniversary. Can you believe that? So it sort of got me reinvigorated. And this happened with this buck. And one thing I love about Mississippi is that almost every relationship is 2 handshakes away. Yeah. So, it's great. Mississippi's not a state, it's a club. So I had gotten to know Michael Watson, and I was chatting with him. And one day I was talking to my brother, and I got to give my brother Travis credibility for this. But Travis said, look, if you're friends with Watson, you should ask him about having a velvet season in the state. Look what it's done for Kentucky. Look what it's done for Tennessee. It's a really small commitment. And, I had really been driven to focus on that time, that realm of deer hunting after really getting hard back into bow hunting. And so I mentioned it to him, and he was like, it sounds like a great idea. And we just had some conversations. He directed me to some other conversations. I'm not a lobbyist. I don't have nothing really special happen. I'm just a guy who kept calling people. And then lo and behold, here we are.
So I told you that it's almost historic from the idea conception to law, probably a record amount of time. And while we were on the break, you mentioned to me there was your theory around that. What's your theory on that?
Oh, well, I just feel like everybody, but especially legislators and government leaders, are just exhausted from the heaviness of everything we've dealt with, really probably since 2016, but definitely from the 2020 timeline on. And it seemed like to me that people in Mississippi love the outdoors. Mississippi leaders love the outdoors. And I just felt like this one, it seemed more interesting to them. Maybe it was a nice little escape from some of the more stuffy things that they were dealing with that are very important. But, it seemed that from a relationship standpoint, people were just interested in this. They just really were. It's not like I slaved over it. It turned out to be something where it was just relationships, conversations, and there it was.
Well, Taylor, what's interesting to me, and I've said this so many times on the show, and you said it as well before we started the show, is that the outdoors is the one time when we can all come together and set our politics aside and join together and just love the outdoors together. And it doesn't really matter what your political beliefs are. And, in Mississippi especially, if we can usually get aligned around something that's compelling, that's exciting, that can really add to the outdoor enjoyment in the state. And it's good to see bipartisan support in a situation like that, isn't it?
It really is. And nature and the outdoors is an equalizer. It's something we all have in common. And it does bring people together in a unique way. There are things almost unspoken about it. You can't even really articulate, but it does. People can get on the same page. They really can.
Well, I've got a couple of friends that have different political beliefs than me, but man, when we talk about fly fishing or we talk about fishing at the islands or going duck hunting together, man, there's a love there. It's real too, and we just know if we talk about politics, don't get too involved and don't get too passionate. Just it's best to stay with the fly fishing and the island fishing and whatever.
No, it is. I tell you what, I was talking to somebody recently who is involved with an outdoors group on Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C. And he told me, he said, Sledge, do you think that Tucker Carlson and Rachel Maddow have anything in common? I was like, no, nothing, not a darn thing. And he said, well, I'll tell you what, they have one thing in common. I said, what is it? He said, they both fish over 100 days a year. Now, wow. I couldn't believe that, but you never know. And that, it's a great equalizer. It's a big, giant connector. Now, they may not go out together on the weekends or anything, but they do have that in common.
They probably don't, but it is about passion for the outdoors, and that does bring us together. But I really want to congratulate you on your success to have this idea. Your brother played his role, but at the end of the day, we've got a new season in Mississippi. It's a 3-day season in September. We'll be talking more about that with William McKinley here shortly. But as you look forward in the few minutes that we have left, you look forward to enjoying the outdoors. What's your next kind of adventure?
Yeah, so I actually have a mule deer hunt coming up. It's a high altitude hunt. I've been training for it about every day, and that's what I was saying earlier. One reason why my hair's short right now is I'm going to be in the backcountry for a little while, and I want to be really prepared for that. So I've got that on the horizon, and also taking my sons hunting this fall. I mean, I am always really fired up about that, and just being a part of the hunting experience with them and seeing them discover it, I can't get enough of it, man. I can't. It is really, really wonderful. So I
feel the same way. My sons obviously are old enough to hunt on their own. One works in New York City, and hunting brings them back home, and fishing does as well. Another son who's a lawyer here on the coast, and we call him the fish whisperer. He's really a good fisherman, but we love spending time together. I have friends who have kids. I love to take them. I would much rather take a kid hunting or fishing than an adult, just because to be able to see it through their eyes, to watch their enjoyment, to watch that youthful exuberance for this incredible resource. It's such a gift, and we're lucky to live in this great state and have the honor of experiencing the great outdoors here. But anyway, Taylor, it's been a pleasure to chat with you this morning, my friend.
Absolutely, I've enjoyed it as well. Thank you so much, Ricky.
Yeah, no doubt. This has been Taylor Sledge. He had the idea to do velvet hunting in Mississippi, and now we have a law that's going to start a special 3-day season in September. We'll be talking more with William McKinley after this break about that. See you later, Taylor, and we'll see William after the break. See you then. Welcome back to SuperTalk Outdoors. I really enjoyed that conversation with Taylor Sledge. Again, the thing that really struck me about that conversation, certainly a great idea in doing a velvet season for Mississippi, but set that aside for a second. It's just his pure love of the outdoors. And he learned it from his father, and he's passing it on to his kids. And at the end of the day, that's what life is all about. When that's the heart of your value system, you almost can't mess up. And I love being able to share stories like that we just had with Taylor Sledge. What a terrific outdoorsman and Mississippian. Now let's shift gears. Listen, if I could do a show on whitetail deer every week, I'd be happy with it. And I would always make William McKinley, the deer program coordinator for the Mississippi Department of Wildlife, Fisheries, and Parks, part of that program, because he's a good dude. I enjoy our time together, William, but he's an expert. And I love to duck hunt and do other kinds of hunting, and I love to fish. But boy, deer season to me, and getting prepared for deer season, is just a fun time of year for us. So anyway, without any further ado, let me welcome my friend William McKinley back to SuperTalk Outdoors. How you doing, William?
I'm doing great, Ricky. Good to be here.
It's good to see you. Hey, we're going to talk a little bit about the upcoming velvet season, but first, let's go back to last deer season and see how this year looks. Okay, first of all, I mentioned to you while we were off the air, when I was out checking out the farms that we lease in the Delta, man, the crops were incredibly good. I mean, like I saw some of the most lush soybeans I've ever seen, some 3 and 4 feet high and just beautiful. I mean, they had a really difficult time at the beginning of the season, not a lot of rain, had to do a lot of irrigation. The dry land farmers had a real challenge in the beginning, but then we had tactical rain that happened just the way it should happen. But that has to bode well for the deer season. And then the other is, okay, so that's for number one. How does that contribute? And number two, last year when we talked, it was a weird season for us. We did well. We got some good big deer. I showed you a few pictures before we started the show. But there was a stretch where we didn't have a lot of deer activity. It was just, I get it was hotter than normal. We didn't have a lot of rain. It was just a weird season. How did it turn out when you guys looked at it?
We're getting preliminary numbers, so we have to wait, and we do a phone survey is the way we get our harvest numbers every year. But those numbers are preliminary, looking like I expected harvest to decrease. I mean, think of how hot it was through Christmas and New Year's. It was in the 80s, and it appears that it didn't. It appears that it stayed right about the same to slightly increased. We gained a lot of hunters in COVID year 2020, and those hunters started putting more deer in the freezer. We saw the largest increase, 1 year increase in harvest we had seen since we started keeping records, up to about 265,000 deer. That's just licensed hunters. So when you factor in all the youth, all the senior, all the other exempt hunters out there, harvesting, we estimate well over 300,000 deer a year. And it appears those numbers stayed about equal last year, and that's a good thing. That's a very good thing. The deer population has been growing.
I would have never guessed it, though. We had a bunch of deer we followed on camera, and I've come to grips with the reality that some of those deer that we have early in the season, especially in the areas that are near farmland, that a third of them probably going to stay, a third of them are going to go within a mile or so, and then a third of them are going to go Lord knows where, But hey, what's interesting is that yeah, go ahead.
Our buck that we have GPS collared with MSU, he came back last week from Louisiana. That's his 4th trip across the river, 18 miles straight to point, and he's about 5.5 miles from where we caught him. And that's what he did last year. So he's following that same route. That's out of a sample size of 4 deer. We got one going 22 miles east and one going 18 miles and swimming the river 4 times in 2 years. So they move a lot, Ricky. They move a lot.
We think about that. We got a deer called Twin Towers. Beautiful 10-point. It'd probably be, I don't know, maybe 5 years old this year. And it would have, if we had it, we think we had it on camera early, and then we didn't see it again. But if it lived, it would have been, it'd been 160. And this year, I don't know what it's going to be if it lived. But, people, there's no way it lived. Well, yeah, actually there is. They have a way of getting through the gauntlet, don't they?
They do. They'll seek out a little refuge, and they have a very good ability at finding a spot to not get shot, or at least they think. Old radio studies actually showed deer in Louisiana would, deer hunting season, swim across to Mississippi, and some deer in Mississippi would swim across to Louisiana. So it's all in where they felt safe. But they find their own little nooks.
Yeah. Again, after last season, though, I would have definitely predicted, if you'd asked me, without giving me any data, if you'd asked me how was last season, if the numbers were up, I would have said they were only up because the number of hunters continued to go up because of the number of people going into the outdoors because of COVID. But it was so hot, and it was such a weird, rut for us last year was strange. And look, man, we have some wonderful places in the heart of the Mississippi Delta. We know what a good rut looks like, but we didn't experience that last year. It was just a strange season. But again, we got some great deer. And we ended the season on a really beautiful deer. So a deer that we never had on camera. So you never know, do you? Anything can happen at any time. That's what you keep telling people, isn't it?
It is. This deer herd is constantly changing. Management of it's constantly changing. But I still say we've got one of the best deer herds there is anywhere in the country. So
I can't agree more, man. I mean, that's why, again, I say every single week, more than once, we're the capital of the outdoors in America, because when you add it all up, think about habitat and ducks and deer and turkey and all the things that we have, the offshore fishing. When you add it all up, we're the capital of the outdoors in Mississippi. I mean, in America. The sad reality of that is that people from outside the state are beginning to realize that, and you're having to have, in some respects, non-resident hunting days, etc. So I guess that's good from an economic point of view, but from a competitive point of view, I think that just increases the number of hunters in the field. But we got plenty of WMAs to deal with that, don't we?
We do. We've got over 50 wildlife management areas. We got literally well over 1 million acres of public ground out there for hunters to come in, and so yes, we have a lot of open ground out there to hunt.
So we got a velvet season coming up. You heard where the idea came from, and legislature passed that pretty quickly. What are you expecting in this velvet season?
So, well, it's going to be new, and we're trying to educate hunters, which is one of the things we're doing today, Ricky, and I appreciate being on the show. You got the facts, but then you got what to expect. I'll look at Tennessee. Tennessee has had a 3-day velvet hunt now for 4 years. And they allow archery only in most of the state, and in their CWD zone, they allow guns. So we're doing archery only for the entire state. It represents about 1% of the total buck harvest in Tennessee. So that's not a lot, and it's not altering. It doesn't change how there's been thoughts of, will we have to limit other portions of the season? No, not over 1%. And that buck counts toward your annual bag limit anyway. So what Tennessee saw is that number stayed fairly consistent over those 4 years. Hunter participation, somewhat consistent. They did see it decline some after the first year. And I think that's a lot of people went out and said, okay, I did it. And maybe I want to wait till it's a little cooler. But, man, I'm hearing a lot of interest. A lot of people are calling. They're excited about this season. And remember those bucks that are all bachelor grouped up in that soybean field? You're going to have an opportunity at those. So
I know that well, because that date is a time when they haven't begun to beat each other's brains out. At that moment is when you start to see, in some respects, kind of the mass exodus. That so the big boys might stay around for a little bit of time. The little guys, they got to go find another place to play.
That's right.
And from that point forward, the dynamics continue, obviously, until you get to rut, and then it's a whole new level of dynamic. Something we really enjoy in Mississippi. My thought on it, I have a lot of questions about it, and we'll get to some of the specifics in the next segment. But so if you've got, you and I have talked about, and we alluded to it just a few minutes ago, this research that you guys have done. It's incredible that one deer went as far as 18 miles, another one went as far as 22 miles. That's incredible data points to have. You have your resident deer, you have some deer that are not going to go nearly that far, but still they're going to go onto other land outside your land. When you know that about 1/3, when you know that exists like that, when you go in and start doing early season hunts, is it possible that you might push some deer off your property?
If so, that's deer that are probably going to have left anyway. What I look at this is it gives you an opportunity on some deer that wouldn't even have been there when season opened on your property.
Yeah.
So, or if they would have, you would only had the first few days of October before they busted up and headed to parts unknown, or known only to them.
It was like Taylor said in the last segment, the picture of the deer that he was pursuing was an absolute giant. And then, of course, when the season started, the bow season started, it was long gone. And this is sort of an answer to that call. Hey, when we come back, we're going to continue to talk about the velvet season with William McKinley. We'll see you after this break.
We live in one of the best places in America to enjoy the outdoors. So let's talk about it. It's Super Talk Outdoors with Ricky Matthews on Super Talk Mississippi.
It's cut through walls and falls
Welcome back to Super Talk Outdoors. Like I said, if I had the opportunity to have a deer show every week, I would enjoy that. And as I mentioned at the beginning of the show, William McKinley, who's head of the white-tailed deer program for the Department of Wildlife, Fisheries, and Parks, would be a regular, if not weekly, guest of that show. I really enjoy spending time with him. And as he said to me during the break, he said, well, man, I've devoted my life to this. He really knows what he's talking about. Hey, you were saying something about one of those deer that you tracked during the break. Share that story, because that is so interesting to me.
So that buck, he was a 3-year-old when we caught him, so he's a 5-year-old now. And he left in March to leave Mississippi, swim across the river, and go into Louisiana and go 5 miles across, took an exact route up ditch rows, hedge rows, fence rows, to an exact piece of ground that's only about 150 acres of woods. When he came back in August, the very 1st of August. He followed the exact same route coming back. When he left this year back in March, he left within 3 days of when he left last year. I think it was March 10th versus March 13th. And when he came back, it was within 7 days of when he came back. And all 4 times he's following the same route. He is a creature of habit, and his path is about 35 miles to go 18 miles. So you think how much ground he's covering, and he's swimming the river 4 times. So it's pretty impressive. And this, once again, we've only got a few radio collar, GPS collar. This is how many are going that far. The other deer was a doe, and she actually, when the water came up this year, she went 22 miles east and went from around the Eagle Lake community all the way up into Yazoo County, but stayed in the Delta. She followed Highway 3, and she's still there, as her movements have decreased significantly a few weeks ago, indicating she probably had a fawn there. So.
Yeah, well, that's so interesting. Hey, real quick before we get to the specifics of the velvet season, how's the fawn drop look for this year?
Reports are coming in from all over. It appears very good. We need more deer harvested in a lot of places across the state. So we need more hunters. I talked about that harvest being up. We encourage hunters to get out there and use these tools that we've given them, like this velvet season and early antlerless season and primitive weapon season, all those things. So a lot of fawns hitting the ground.
Wow, that's so interesting to hear. Okay, so let's get to the specifics of the velvet season. Give us what people need to know about it.
Okay, September 16th through 18th. That's a Friday, Saturday, Sunday. It'll be archery only, private lands only. We were given the opportunity to enlist WMAs. By it coming in later, we decided to go conservative for the first year, stick with private land only, with the opportunity to try to open up some other lands in the future. There's a 1 buck limit and per season, so all 3 days you can make harvest 1 buck. And that 1 buck must have antlers that meet the deer management unit in which you're hunting. So the Delta DMU, he would need to be a 12-inch spread or 15-inch main beam. On other DMUs, a 10-inch spread or 13-inch main beam, except for the North Central, which can be any antlered deer. You got to have a permit for it. It's $10 for resident. It's the velvet antler permit. For non-residents, they have to buy the deer permit, which they already had to buy anyway, and the cost of it is $50. It is mandatory reporting. We've been asking for mandatory reporting for many years. We've got it with this season. You've got to report either via the website or the app, and I highly encourage the MDWFP app. It's so quick and easy. It takes 30 seconds of logging on, recording that animal before you move it, but you got to do it before 10 p.m. the day of harvest. And it is mandatory CWD sampling for this season statewide. And we have more drop-off points this year. There'll be over 60 drop-off freezers statewide. And we're going to be working with a ton of taxidermists that you can just harvest this buck. He's in velvet. You want to get him mounted, you take him to one of the taxidermists. They pull the sample, turn it in. You don't have to do anything extra there. So that list of freezers and taxidermists will all be on our website. We're working on getting it finalized. It will certainly be there before the season opens.
Awesome. Have you dropped some areas from CWD?
We did. Some counties came out of the zone. The commission removed some counties out of the zone, but we also added 4 counties into the zone because of new fines last year. So
they can go. I guess the best thing to do is just go to the Department's of Wildlife, Fisheries, and Parks website and do a CWD search, and you'll find the relevant information. I think my place that we lease up in Mentor City, I think that's Tallahatchie County. Mm-hmm. Was that dropped? I think that was dropped.
Tallahatchie and LaFleur, the commission removed both of those counties from the CWD zone this year.
Well, that's good news. I'm glad to hear that. William McKinley, it's a pleasure to spend some time with you. We'll have you back on a regular basis between now and the end of the season.
Sounds good, Ricky.
You bet, my friend. Hey, this has been a terrific show. Really enjoyed being here today. Thank you for joining us on SuperTalk Mississippi Radio Network or on C-Spire, SuperTalk TV at C-Spire TV. Have a great week. And as I always say, keep safety first. Just think safety first in everything you do when you're outdoors, and you'll enjoy it. Have a great week, and we'll see you next Monday.